So you're running out of closet space. The good news? You don't need to stop shopping. You just need to start selling with The RealReal. The RealReal is the world's largest and most trusted resource for authenticated luxury resale. Whether it's that mini bag that can't even fit your phone or those boots you never fully broke in, The RealReal handles everything from photography and copywriting to shipping and pricing. So you can just sit back, get paid, and make room for things that actually feel like you. And with 10,000 plus new arrivals every single day from top designers like Prada, Celine, Louis Vuitton, and Loewe, all for up to 90% off retail, you're bound to find something perfectly on brand to fill that extra closet space with. Plus, this May only, you can get an extra $200 to shop when you sell for the first time. Make room for what feels like you. Go to therealreal.com to start selling and get your extra $200 to keep shopping at therealreal.com. That's therealreal.com. Terms apply.
This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Welcome to this podcast, Season 9, Episode 14. My name is Tim Mitra, and I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined by Jonathan Kuline, who's in Lawrenceville, Bristol, New Brunswick.
Hello there, kids.
Yeah, no, I don't know why I put Season 9 question mark. Maybe I had the fact that Strange New Worlds was coming, but I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, welcome to Season 9. We continue with Season 9. Or as Siri says, when we're driving along Dundas and we cross a bridge over the Don Valley Parkway, it says continue on to Dundas, which we're already on. So
there you go. Continue on to Season 9.
Drives Carol nuts when and especially on the Gardner, where it says continue on to the Gardner when you're already on the Gardner.
Yeah, I like it when it says turn on to Lancashire Road.
Oh yeah, and Pap Avenue.
Pap Avenue, yeah, that's right.
Oh, you should hear it say Cooline. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Cooline, I think it says. Alrighty, fact check from last time. Dolores Taylor stars with Tom Laughlin in Billy Jack. I thought it was Sandra Locke, because they're very similar look, although Sandra Locke's a lot easier on the eyes, in my opinion. But surprisingly, Billy Jack was also the breakout role for Howard Hessman, who played I think he was a stoner in the school or something like that, but it wasn't young.
Yeah, I think I've seen the clip.
Yeah, stoner college student. Yeah, that was from Billy Jack.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you remember, my friend was impressed with the fact that Billy Jack is standing in face to face with somebody. He says, I'm going to take my right foot and hit you on the left side of your face. Yeah. And then he does. Yeah, that's in the trailer. So, alrighty. And you had mentioned Zeotrope, and Zeotrope is in fact the correct name. And I have a link here in the show notes to the Peter Gabriel picture disc from Record Day 2026 spinning on the turntable. Although I think you need to use a strobe or something to make it, because they used to have strobe lights. I don't know if you remember, turntables had those little marks on the side, those little gears or whatever. They had like little nubbins on the edges of the disc, and there was a strobe on some players, and you could tell whether or not you were on the right speed if the appropriate row of little sticky outy bits lined up and didn't move, right? So maybe that's why it was like a Zeotrope disc, because you need to have a strobe to be able to see that properly, or like a screen with like a thin line, right? Cool. All right, that's it for our fact check. Surprisingly short. All right. So again, like I said, I was confused because in the headlines, which we're now going to, I found I loaded up here the Strange New Worlds teaser, I guess. Strange New Worlds Season 4 teaser. So little bits of everybody in it, but not really. I don't know if there's really any sort of things we could extract from it. Did you watch it?
I did, and yeah, I don't think it was anything like revelatory. A little more Kirk than I think we've seen in previous trailers for previous seasons. So I think we're gonna see a little, maybe more of that version of the character moving into the center stage as we get closer to the end, which makes sense. And, I think we're all kind of hoping that we start to see clues that we're going to get the rumored Star Trek First Voyages, Star Trek Season 1, whatever it is they're going to call the next series after this, if they decide to continue with the original crew and New Adventures kind of storyline. So that checks out. Other than that, not really much of anything. they don't even, I thought maybe they would be heavier on the foreshadowing for Pike's fate, because I don't know if that's going to come up in this season or if they're going to wait till that little shortened season that's the final season coming next year. But yeah, again, it looks great. We've got a date, which is great, so we know it's coming in July. I think it's the 23rd. It said, right? So it's nice that we have some concrete date to work towards. We're going to have some new Trek for our Trek show in the not distant future. But yeah, it's not nothing groundbreaking here, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think Christopher Pike has to go into the TARDIS and transform into James Kirk, right?
That's how that works, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Or either that or he turns into Billy Piper. I can't remember which one. All right. So over to you for a bunch of headline stories.
Yeah, a few things. So we got news this week that the Boys spinoff, Gen V, is not returning for a season 3 at Amazon. So, I can't say that I'm super surprised, given the fact that this is, it always kind of felt like adjacent to the Boys, and a little bit, especially the second season really felt like setup for season 5 of the Boys. Like it had its own story, but it really kind of felt like it was servicing the future. And, I think it was always a bit on the bubble. I'm disappointed because I certainly feel like I've, after 2 seasons, I've invested in the characters a little bit. Maybe this is also foreshadowing what's going to happen in the final few episodes of The Boys. For all we know, these characters, I think they've already said that a few of them are going to appear in the final few episodes. So maybe they all die and that's why there's no show, maybe there's a reason beyond that. But yeah, they've already said they're going to do this prequel series called Vought Rising at Amazon, which is going to center around Soldier Boy and Stormfront, and that's going to be sort of the next thing. So maybe that's where they're kind of putting their eggs at this point. But, The Boys has been a really successful franchise for Amazon. And, it always becomes a challenge when you get to the end of the sort of the main series. Can you spin it off? Is there a place to go? I'm a little surprised that Gen V's gone, just because it was the only other name that was kind of known, but maybe it just didn't have the audience that we hoped it would have.
It is. It was sort of a surprising sort of story, right? But in terms of like where it was going, it didn't really seem to have much legs, not like the Boys kind of sort of have a global effect, although it seems to be centered in America, but in Russia, I guess.
And again, I'm hoping that we'll see some of the characters over the next few weeks, and that we'll get some sort of closure for what happens with them, but obviously you never know with these things. Speaking of things that are not going forward, the folks at DC, specifically James Gunn, says that they are moving their adaptation of the comic book The Authority to the back burner. This was an interesting story when they announced the sort of slate that they were going to do of upcoming DC movies once James Gunn took over the studio. Because The Authority is sort of a more extreme take on superhero teams. It's like, what if the Justice League fought to win? Like they kill, they cheat, they do whatever it takes. They're much more sort of extreme. Think about like the Punisher with superpowers. Like they have a more extreme view of how to take care of things, and they tackle things with humongous scope. It's a great comic book. Highly recommend the read. But it was always a bit of a strange fit with the first slate. Now, they didn't say it didn't work out at all. They just said that the script wasn't quite there and that it didn't fit in with what they're doing right now. So they're not saying we're not doing this at all, although if you read between the lines, maybe it is completely dead. But yeah, I was disappointed to see this, because it's one book that I've always been a fan of. I read those when they first came out, and I read the series that preceded it in Stormwatch, which was a terrific read by Warren Ellis. I think it would have been a really cool thing to see that type of superhero portrayal, that very modern sensibility applied to, it's not Superman and Batman where they're like, well, I've caught them and I'll put them in prison and we'll see them again next week. It was very much like, and we'll put a hole in their head and they won't ever get up again. So I think it would have been interesting to see how the public reacted to that type of superhero-dom, although maybe The Boys is a reflection of that as well. I mean, they're both sort of those modern era books, but disappointed it's not happening, and hopefully maybe we get some good news down the road, but I'm not going to hold my breath. House of the Dragon, we got another House of the Dragon teaser trailer, another short one. It's only like it's a minute and 40, so it's longer than the first one we got. This one came out last week, and it's much more focused. This one's really focused on Rhaenyra and sort of the I should be the queen by divine providence. I belong on the throne. There's a lot of sort of that mythology that comes with the sort of hero building that comes with conflict and war of like, well, we're not just fighting for power or money. We're fighting for legacy and honor and because of divine right and all this stuff, which is going to be a major component of this upcoming season. The idea that Rhaenyra believes that she is meant to be on the throne, and that there's this divine providence that should have her sitting on the throne. Usually when people who are fighting conflicts start saying God's on their side, things really go off the rails. And I think that's where we're headed in this season is, once people start reading their own literature, things really start going sideways. And I think that's going to be the vibe this season. Did you watch this one? What'd you think?
I did watch bits of it. I mean, didn't really get much out of it. Like there's some new characters that have sort of appeared, the Iron Throne's in there, obviously. Matt Smith got lots of blood on his face, so and of course there's Rhaenyra, obviously suffering issues, and getting advice from her uncle and whatever, right? The Black Captain, but remains to be seen. But it's coming out. Oh, are you there? Coming out at the same time as the new Star Trek stuff, right? June something.
Yep. So we're gonna have this is coming June 22nd, so it's coming about a month before we get
the New World,
Strange New Worlds. So I think we'll have pretty consistent content for Spotcast over the next little while to keep us busy right into the fall, which is not a bad thing. Next up is some sad news. A couple of bits of sad news. So we lost a couple of people this week, as happens. Very sad to say that the writer Jerry Conway died early this week. May not be a name that everyone knows from comic books like a Stan Lee, but Jerry worked on a lot of books in the 70s and 80s for Marvel Comics. He also was responsible for some of their crossover content where they were working with animation studios. So his legacy is pretty huge. He was the writer part of the creation of characters like the Punisher, may have heard of him, Ms. Marvel, Man-Thing, Killer Croc, Jason Todd, the second Robin, Power Girl, Firestorm, and he also wrote entire episodes of the original 1980s Transformers series, the original 1980s G.I. Joe series. So he may not be a name that you recognize, but he's certainly somebody who's had a big influence on a kid who was, raised in the 80s or 70s, created a lot of memorable characters or co-created a lot of memorable characters, and leaves behind a pretty impressive roster of creative ideas and concepts and characters for all of us. So I wanted to shout out Jerry, and he was 73, and so sad to see him go, but really, really impressive legacy behind him.
Not too old in this day and age,
No, I know it's a strange thing when you're like, that doesn't feel like a full life, and yet it's better than The other person who passed away this week was the creator of He-Man. Roger Sweet was his name. This is the person who created the concept for the toy line that became such a huge thing. That's going to be a feature film this summer called Masters of the Universe. And, this was somebody who, came up with the looks and the backstories and all that stuff. So in another way, this is somebody who really shaped a lot of memories and childhood memories for a lot of kids of the 80s. It was such a phenomenon for a lot of kids. And Roger was kind of the brains behind that creation. So I know a lot of people were eulogizing him online this week, saying, this sort of crazy bunch of characters that he created through the Masters of the Universe, and Skeletor and He-Man and all these things. Again, it wasn't really my bag. It was just a little bit behind where I was as a kid who was born in the 70s. But a huge phenomenon that's carried through for, now we're talking about, almost 50 years of a legacy of these characters enduring. So again, major contribution to pop culture, and another sad loss in Roger Sweet.
Yeah, it's an interesting story from the point of view, like it says that, like you said, it starts with the toys as opposed to like a movie or whatever. But the fact that Mattel had turned down the deal to do Star Wars, and then had to come up with something, and then enter him, and he took the big Jim guy. That was the big stretchy guy, right? And
Big Jim was like a G.I. Joe looking kind of dude,
Yeah. So he turned him into this, and then the cartoon came out of the toys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is
it was
a weird way to do it.
A big trend of the 1980s to develop a toy line and then develop the marketing material around that. So they would do this, we're going to redo
like Transformers Joe. And
yep, G.I. Joe, Transformers, yeah. Thundercats, all those shows. They were all kind of, let's create the show, to service the toys. They wanted people to have that, 4-quadrant, approach. So they would, they create a comic book line and this, and we'll make a video game, and they would find ways to basically make you find all these access points to these things. And it's funny how sometimes it's the people have stronger memories of the toys than they do of the show, or vice versa. And it's funny how those things all just sort of glue together. But yeah, I remember He-Man being such a big thing because it was a distinctive. It was kind of in between size of a Star Wars figure or a modern 1980s G.I. Joe, but not as big as an old classic like Mego figure from the 1970s or a G.I. Joe from the 1970s or 60s, those like full-sized toys. Yeah. It was kind of a tweener. Yeah, it was kind of a tweener. They were like, 6 inches. They weren't quite, the G.I. Joes and Star Wars tended to be around like 4 inches. So it kind of had its own little niche there of like, well, you can't play with those figures with these figures because they're different figures. It was quite a thing, but yeah, again, huge phenomenon, created an enduring legacy, and big ups to Roger for creating something that's endured. I mean, kind of the dream of any creator, right? Someday they'll be talking about Spockcast the same way.
Well, who knows? When we do our toy line, that might be true. So that brings us to the main part of the show, which we're going to talk about the last of the 3 remaining shows that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. And that is Daredevil, Star Trek, Star Wars Maul, and The Boys. So Daredevil Born Again, The Hateful Darkness. So our friend Karen at the end of the last episode was arrested. So now she's in the Who's Cow, right?
Yeah. And the episode kicks off with a bit of a bang when not only is she there and going through the whole process, and obviously pretty demeaning to have been caught and to be treated as a criminal, but then gets a visit from a very, very unpleasant Wilson Fisk, who threatens her and chokes her and is basically like, I'm going to use you as an example and as bait, right?
Yeah, and then of course, and then she decides to go through with the case, I guess, to bring it to the public, right, sort of thing. And of course, it's without a jury, and it's that same smarmy lawyer that went up against our people before.
Yeah, the district attorney.
Yeah, it was the what's the Mexican guy with the white mask.
Yeah, the White Tiger. Yeah,
the White Tiger. Yeah. So he was tried and found guilty. But so, and then the partner lawyer of Matt Murdock seems to be the defense lawyer, right? And then surprise, they're bringing a surprise litigator, and it turns out to be Matt Murdock, right? So
yeah, that was straight out of Perry Mason.
Was it?
It just felt like that. We've got a stunning special appearance. Dun, dun, dun. That felt like those old 1950s Perry Mason episodes. We used to watch on
it's
TV.
funny whenever I see stuff like that in TV shows and movies where they have these surprise witnesses and this last minute, bit of evidence. But I think, well, if you've seen My Cousin Vinny, that everything's disclosed beforehand. Yeah. You don't surprise people in court. It's just not the way it happens, right? So they would have had to have, in a real court, they would have had to the judge and the defense and the district attorney would have known that Matt Murdock was going to show up, right? So, but it makes great television, right? Because here's this guy that's he's number one on the wanted list. Never mind Karen Page, right? So yeah, and he shows up and starts asking questions and does his Matt Murdock thing, right?
Yeah, and that's the one thing that's kind of been missing this season is in previous seasons sometimes too much. You could make a case, but they do try and balance out in the comic world a little bit the fact that Matt isn't just Daredevil, and that's not the only way that he exacts justice. He is a very good lawyer, and that is a big part of who he is and how he does his work. So it was kind of cool to see him back, playing the blind lawyer who, is using his smarts, not just his fists. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and of course we also say we had the B plot where he gives an assignment to Bullseye, right? Because we know that Fisk is trying to, I don't know where they get these ideas from, but he's trying to take over the state, right? Like. We have a premier in Ontario who wants to be the mayor of Toronto, but same sort of thing in reverse, right? But yeah, so I kind of, I don't know, it was kind of projected in my mind. You probably knew it was coming too, that he was given this assignment, and the assignment obviously was to protect the governor,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and so that plays out that the governor is finally ready to intervene and stop Fisk's reign of terror in New York City, and of course we get the tip early on that maybe Fisk is going to take the governor out, but Matt has basically said go do one good thing, you miserable SOB, and so Dex goes and actually protects the governor. Puts a couple of knives into a would-be assassin and keeps that political opportunity for removing Fisk, not just the getting thrown out a window by Matt Murdock kind of option on the table, which is cool. And then there's the C plot to this episode too that was pretty, probably the most compelling part of this episode really was the stuff between between BB and what's the fellow's. Oh, Daniel. Daniel. I was just trying to think. I knew it was Michael Gandolfini. I couldn't remember his character's name. So, Daniel obviously last week sort of, has this moment where he sort of catches BB lying to him and now Buck Cashman.
Well, he finds the disc in her pocket. Like, I thought she had delivered that, or was this just supposed to be the next disc or something, or the next SD card in her pocket, right? This isn't the same one that the dude dropped in her pocket a couple of weeks ago, right?
I don't know.
And she just never found it?
Yeah, maybe that's the case. Maybe that's how they're trying to spin it. But he basically is like, I got you, and now I have to turn you over to Buck, who's the man who does the dirty work for Fisk. And so, then Daniel basically has to choose, does he support BB or does he, support his boss? And because he's now gone through this sort of dark set of events with Buck, he knows that, he could tell himself some lies before about what was really happening behind the scenes. And now he knows, Buck kills people. And, if he turns BB over, she's going to die. And so we get this really interesting moment where he walks her literally to the door of this place where he's going to turn her over, and then finally has a change of heart and lets her go and says, make this count, make this worth it. But then does the strange thing, and I'm not sure I understand why people do this in movies and TV shows, but instead of being like, well, I'm going to get whacked if I go in there, I should probably just also go into hiding or something. He walks in the door and confronts Buck, thinking that they have built enough of a bond, maybe, that he won't hurt him or kill him. And you can tell that there's definitely some conflict when, Buck, obviously he's doing his job. He works Daniel over, and he's, trying to get him to confess. Where's BB? Let's go. Come on. And then there's a real sort of moment there at the end of, is Buck gonna be sentimental? Is he going to, he said before, like, I like Daniel, like he does have this soft spot for him, and you're like, well, maybe he's gonna let him go, and nope, he does not let him go. So that was I was a little surprised by that twist. I got to be honest. I usually see a lot of stuff coming. I did not think necessarily that Daniel.
Oh, you didn't think that Buck like what? Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, it was surprising that he got offed in this episode.
Yeah.
We can't say 86 anymore, right? But
not unless you want to get taken to court.
That's true. But he, I mean, like, you mean when Buck pulls out his gun and he's going to shoot him, you didn't think he was going to pull the trigger, or there was a slight hesitation, but I think that was just for dramatic pause, right?
Yeah, but again, I think it was supposed to be built up on the fact that we had seen them bond and connect. The fact that Daniel had gone with him to bury the body for the guy from the boat and stuff like that. Like, I think the idea is that Daniel was wagering that Buck, after all this, would not be able to pull the trigger. And there is a bit of a moment where you're like, is he? And then he does, and you're like, huh, okay, so I guess Buck's in it to win it. He's he'll do whatever it takes. But a bit of a strange ending. And they'd really kind of made a point of making Daniel an important character. And I think it's probably credit to the performance by Michael Gandolfini that he turned this kind of dorky, naive, kind of smarmy deputy mayor character into something that kind of had a life of its own. They gave him lots of room to roam and lots of opportunity to be on the show. So yeah, again, I was a little surprised that they offed him, especially because this isn't the finale, and it just felt like the stakes were a little low for it. But yeah, I mean, again, obviously he's gone now, so credit to Michael for a terrific performance. But it was a bit of a strange place to sort of, it ended the episode in a very dark and quiet place, setting up a finale for next week.
So there was one sort of question. He tells, before they get out of the car, like he's told BB they were going to a safe house, which is the ruse to get her to go with him. Mm-hmm. And just before he gets out of the car, he tells her that I don't know if you remember. I don't remember if he says he buried who he said he buried, but he said, I buried a guy with Buck last week, and I don't want anybody to know that. Yeah. Right. Which kind of feels like, I kind of wondered, like, so the two of them are going to run away, or like, why did he tell BB that? And then, but then he walks in to confront. I mean, I don't know, but it's before he has the change of heart with her to let her go. But why does he tell her that and then go in to meet his own end?
Yeah, I mean, my only thought was maybe his thought is that he feels like he crossed a line and there was no going back for him, right?
Right.
Maybe he thought, like I have to go and face down Buck because I'm just as culpable because I literally used an uncharged saw from Home Depot to chop a guy up and bury his body.
The hard way, the hard way. But again, the question I'm asking you as a writer, like, why was that point made? Is she going to use that in the next episode?
I would think so. I would think that her revenge on Buck for killing Daniel will be that she will somehow figure out where the body is buried and tie it back to him.
he did say they went up to
They went up to Albany, and
yeah.
So maybe she'll have some way of tracking his movements, like Daniel's movements or something. Maybe the payoff is that she's going to be the one who gets Buck, because she'll have the motivation, obviously, because she.
Well, surely they'll go to the hardware store and they will ask to see the tape of Buck buying the
saw and the
saw and the shammo, and then of course the VCR would not have worked that day.
That sounds about right. Can we talk about? There was one scene in here that was really, really weird, and I want to talk about it. It's the scene where Daredevil / Matt's ex, Heather Glenn.
Yeah. Oh, with the earring. The earring.
Not the earring. It's the scene where she confronts. Karen. That scene is super weird. Now, they seem to be hinting that part of her trauma from the stuff that happened with the character Muse last year, where Muse kidnapped her and was gonna, murder her and everything else. They seem to be shading her towards like that incident didn't make her meek, it made her violent and criminal. So she, we saw the criminal, she stole from Fisk, which is insane, and got caught, and yet is okay. Although now he has leverage on her. But then we also get this really odd scene where she goes in to do the psychological assessment of Karen. And of course, Karen is so good, and I mean, credit again, Deborah Ann Woll, such a terrific performer in this role, is so good with her. Where she's just picking away at Heather and sort of, getting under her skin, and Heather basically grabs her by the throat and is going to like beat the crap out of her. And you're just like, what is happening here with this character? I think the idea is supposed to be that she is sort of turning into her own version of Muse, that she's going to sort of become somebody with a broken psychological health, maybe turn into something homicidal or malicious. But yeah, it's just been a weird story arc. And I got to admit, of all the characters, the side characters on this show, that is just the worst one. I don't find her arc at all really very interesting. I find it very confusing and really kind of superfluous to the whole rest of the thing. Maybe it makes sense, and maybe it's so that there is a female to female foil with Karen, so that it's not just Matt and Fisk. But it just, every time she comes on, it gets weirder and weirder. Again, last week with the stealing, this week with the, she basically goes from like, we know she's already crossed some lines. Like, she wrote the report about the swordsman, basically saying like he's a deeply deluded, psychologically damaged person when he goes to trial, right? So I don't know. I don't love her character. I don't love that arc. And I found this week to be sort of the height of the weirdness of it, when she's just like, I'm here to do your psychological assessment and do what I'm told to be part of this regime. And then, it turns into this like raging psycho in the jail room with Karen. She
does manage to get under Karen's skin too, because Karen stands up to her to a certain point and then starts to lose it, kind of what? And she's even asking the questions, right? And you do see for a split second, you see Muse in the mirror, right, in the one-way mirror. Mm-hmm. So that's the sort of indication that this woman has got this psychological issue that's manifested in that reflection, right? Because we see that Muse character a lot, right? But I kind of, it's an interesting, like, to what end, right? So there must be something that's going to come out next week or next week's episode to sort of tie that end, right?
Yeah, that's, I guess, like, the other concern is, if you're going to do that, I think you have to pay it off in this finale that's coming next week for season 2. If they carry this sort of arc of hers all the way to season 3 next year, I just feel like that's maybe a bridge too far. So maybe she has to cross another line next week to really make this make sense.
There is a sort of, the weirdness part is, okay, she was Matt Murdock's girlfriend last season, right? Until she has this confrontation. Daredevil saves her, right? which is Matt Murdock, right? Whether she knows it or not. But she knows he's a troubled guy, like he's got some issues, right? And then this thing with Muse happens, and she's all freaked out or whatever. And then in the beginning of this season, she was Fisk and Vanessa's family therapist, right? At the very beginning. So it's kind of like, okay, how does she go from being anti-Fisk to, okay, now working for Fisk? I mean, is the money that good?
Well, they definitely played that out a little bit in the first season, that she was kind of drifting towards that side after the psychological trauma stuff from Muse.
Okay, right.
So, yeah, but yeah, like I say, she just seems like she's been getting sort of darker and darker and darker. And
well, I mean, from the point of view of like what I was asking earlier about why would the writers do this? I mean, clearly they're doing this for a reason, because like you said, having her as a foil to Karen is not enough.
I agree. I don't think that lands for me, but maybe that's what their motivation is to give Karen a physical foil, somebody who, she can fight so that it's not just, male on female violence or whatever. It's again, like, obviously Karen versus Fisk, we saw even just a slight glimpse of how that would play out. Like, he's just so physically dominant that, like, that's not a thing that's going to happen, right? So I thought, honestly, that if they were going to have a Karen arc that made sense, I thought it would be her versus Powell, the guy that looks like Eric Lindros, and going after the cops and stuff like that, right? Like, I thought that would make more sense, but clearly it's been brewing for a while that this is something else that they're working on. So
yeah, and Powell's got to have his comeuppance too, right? Like, whether it's this season or next, right?
Oh, I mean, eventually that guy's got to get his, because he is just, I mean, kudos to the actor who's, I should look, he's got it somewhere. But, I mean, that guy is just doing overtime work on being an absolute scumbucket. Like, he's just really, I guess, Hamish Allen Headley. Hamish Allen Headley.
I thought it was Derek Lindos or something.
That's right. Playing Officer Powell. Like, he's, he is just chewing up the scenery when he's on the screen, and oh, look at you. He's so dislikable, which again means he's a good actor.
Oh, show.
Now, a word from our sponsor. Now, back to the show.
Well, let's move on to Mr. Maul.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Star Wars Maul. Yeah, Shadow Lord. So we have a couple of episodes, and again, like I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, it's actually Chapter 7 and Chapter 8. Chapter 7 is Called to Oblivion, and Chapter 8 is The Creeping Fear. Now, I think Called to Oblivion is the one with all the pew-pew on the bridge.
Yes, it is. That's the one where the Maul is trying to lead Devin and Riley and his people away from the Empire. They're trying to escape. And the Empire just keeps coming in waves, right? They just keep coming and coming and coming. And so, we get a lot of pew-pew as they're trying to basically simultaneously escape and also shoot a lot of stormtroopers. So,
yeah, I love the part where, Two Boots disarm? He's trying to rescue the son, and
Riley. Yeah.
He disarms he shoots like 4 stormtroopers, and then ends up with a blaster in his hand and just throws it away, because we all know blasters are no good. Unless you're Princess Leia, of course. Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So that, again, good sort of pew-pewy part of that episode, and you get sort of the two storylines, because it's during one of the first interactions where Devin and Riley get separated, and Riley ends up getting pinched by the Imperials and taken to the police station, right? And so that first episode, A Call to Oblivion, Chapter 7, is the one where we see him in prison, Two Boots being like, oh, how did you recognize me without my boots on? And then he ends up getting in contact with Riley's dad, the cop, and so he
and they get the car,
like, yeah. Lawson basically says, like, I'll trade myself, and Two Boots is like, fine, but then it ends up basically being like Two Boots realizes how bad this is going and decides to run with them and get them out of there. So this episode also is pretty significant, because not only do we get they're being pursued by the stormtroopers and Marak, who we've seen in previous episodes, who I'm going to circle back to in a second because I got some stuff to think about that. But we also saw the 11th brother show up as well, the another Inquisitor, the one with the mask, that dark cloak with the white mask. And so we've got 2 Inquisitors on the scene now. So we end up with this pretty cool fight scene between Maul and the 2 Inquisitors. And, you know, it does seem like a mismatch on one side where you're like, well, there's 2 of them and 1 of him. But then you realize Maul is more experienced and, you know, probably better with his sword. But then he's also got this ongoing glitch with his leg, which gets exacerbated at one point during the fight. So it actually ends up being a pretty fair fight between the 3 of them, and sort of sprawls through this whole area, which is, I thought was pretty good. I mean, you know, I don't think it's the best lightsaber fight we've ever seen, but it's kind of cool to see 3 red lightsabered characters kind of throwing down. So I thought that was pretty neat.
And we also got the Twilight driving skills demonstration, right?
Yes, we did.
Talk about typecasting.
We get the you know, the end of this episode is that, you know, basically a couple of the other Night Brothers, the Dathomirians, that like Maul, he's got those 2 guys with him, the one guy with the heavy gun and the other guy with the pistols, and the guy with the heavy gun is like, I'm going to save Maul, and he goes under there, and of course he does not. The 11th brother puts a lightsaber through him, and so Maul basically has to resort to the desperation measures to get away, which is kind of the culmination of the episode. Is he literally brings the house down. He pulls the roof down off of this cave and blocks the 2 sides so he can get out one side, and Inquisitors go at the other. So
there's also the 2 or 3 Mandalorians that break away from what's her name, Captain whatever. They get into they steal the ship, and then they immediately get shot down by the Empire.
Yeah.
So they don't get far anyway. Yeah,
they basically are like, peace out, you made us give up our credits and we don't believe in your cause anymore. And within 10 seconds, they're shot out of the sky. And, you know, that's pretty significant just because that was Maul's ship, right? Like, that was his plan to get off planet, was, I'll get my gang. I've got this young woman in Devon that I want to be my new apprentice. I'm going to get off planet and kind of get what I want out of this for the time being. With my neck intact, and they blow up Maul's ship, so now he has no way off planet either, at least, you know, an obvious one. Yeah. So then moving to chapter 8, you know, we end up with basically the survivors of Maul's group taking off and trying to sort of get to this rendezvous point, and Maul kind of goes on this like vision quest where he's got his leg is all messed up, and you know, he's pretty traumatized, having seen this guy, you know, who was on his crew get impaled, because it reminded him of losing his brother and reminded him of the sort of the torture that he went through when he was doing his training with the Emperor, Darth Sidious. And so he's kind of having this, you know, and it's, you know, more insight into the character of the kind of stuff that's going on in his head, right?
And we're supposed to like him at the end of it, right?
Well,
or feel empathy for him.
We're supposed to empathize with him, but I don't think we're supposed to ever like. I mean, I thought it was interesting. I did see something with Dave Filoni talking about, you know, using Maul as a lead character in the show, and he said, you know, we've seen Maul's end, and we know how much further it is ahead than this show. It's another like 15 years further forward into Rebels when he meets his ultimate fate, and he's never redeemed. Like, we see who he is in Rebels. He's still scheming and plotting and nefarious. And so it's important that this show never redeems him. It can explain away some of the things that are in his head. But even watching that stuff, you know, yeah, of course we feel empathy because we're good people, but he's not. You know, he did obviously go through these tortures and stuff, but he's made choices along the way. Like, he's not.
So I forgot that Rebels comes after this.
Yeah. So I think it's really important when watching this show to remember that, like, this is an irredeemable character. Like, yes, we can take a lot of enjoyment in watching him, and yes, he's extremely compelling, and you know, huge ups to the writers on the show, and particularly Sam Witwer, who does the voice. They make him very charismatic and very engaging, but he's never the good guy. Not ever. He's you know, he's just a different shade of darkness from the side that he's fighting in these episodes. So from there, we end up with that's Two Boots basically helps Riley escape in this one, and they are kind of trying to get out. And this is the part where Lawson's going to turn himself in, and they say, "No, let's get the heck out of here." They think they're going to go meet with Sul, who's the sort of bounty hunter character that we met a few episodes back that has a past with Lawson. And she kind of tips off Lawson like, they're here, I'm compromised, we're screwed. And she basically takes it upon herself to try and spring the trap, more or less. And she springs the trap and ends up basically killing herself, a bunch of stormtroopers, and the Imperial officer that was there, right? So they're all pretty much toasted at that point. And then the episode kind of comes to a close with this sort of dun 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 moment where Maul finally reunites with his crew, and Vario, the little mobster that's been tagging along with them through this whole season, says, "Oh, I got a message from you. Somebody wants to meet with you. It's Dryden Voss." And so here we get our tie-in to the Solo movie, right? Dryden Voss is the character that we saw in that one. He's the sort of the head of Crimson Dawn. He's the mobster who is sort of the godfather, the capo di tutti capo. And he, we know that there's a relationship between those two characters from Solo, that Maul and Voss were working together. So here we're kind of getting more into setting the stage for that. And it's funny because we talk about the Star Wars cartoons sometimes, how Filoni has kind of used them to, if not retcon, to resuscitate or inject new life into some of the theatrical movies. He kind of saved some of those prequel movies by doing an amazing job on Clone Wars. And here it almost seems like he's kind of trying to do that with Solo. Like he's going to try and actually make it all glued together by filling in these blanks. And it's not a bad plan. I mean, we've got a span here. Like this is the furthest into this time period that we've ever been. So this show happens after the events of Bad Batch. It's a year after Bad Batch, but it's like 15 years or 14 years before Rebels. So there's a big window of time here that's never really been super explored in the Star Wars canon. And so it's an opportunity for them to kind of, basically suture all these parts together into a Frankenstein of continuity. And I think, the fact that they're trying to sort of make that scene at the end of Solo make sense and have all those, lines connect. It does make me wonder. We've got 2 episodes to go, and we know we're getting a season 2. They've already confirmed that. I wonder if in the final episode of this series, we don't see Kira, the character that was Han Solo's childhood love interest, that was such a big part of that storyline in Solo, and who, at the end of Solo, if you recall, Maul comes onto a hologram and basically says, Kira, you and I are going to be working much closer now that, Dryden Voss is dead. I wonder if here is where we start gluing those pieces together and get a little bit more of those events. So interesting possibilities.
Yeah. When does she get the dragon eggs, though?
Yeah, I can't remember where she dyes her hair. There's a whole storyline in there somewhere.
Yeah, actually, as we record, it's the 30th of April. We're 5 days away from a rather significant day. And I just want to point out that in case you didn't, if you don't have Disney, again, I don't know why you just listened to us talk about Maul, but if you don't have Disney, all of the Star Wars movies are on sale this week.
Yes, I saw that. Yes,
you can buy them individually for $7.99 Canadian. So you'll have to adjust your price. It's probably like 35 cents US. Or you can get the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy. I think Solo and Rogue One are also on sale, and obviously the later, the end of the Skywalker saga is also available too, as well as the entire, like, I think 9 movies or something. They're available as a package as well. So anyway, off you go if you want to buy the movies and you don't own them already. Well, why don't you own them already? What's wrong with you people?
Because they have them on
I own them all.
27 other formats.
Well, I do too.
Fair. Yeah, they have a big sale on horror movies this week too. There's a bunch of really cool
stuff
on sale there. If you're a horror movie buff, or even some of the horror adjacent stuff, like they have last week in Soho, last night in Soho, the Edgar Wright is on sale, and
I bought the Hobbit, the 3 Hobbit movies because they're in 3D, so I watched them this week. And I just picked up the Jurassic Park.
You get to watch that barrel scene 3D. Woo-hoo.
Yeah, you know what? I gotta say, like the 3D, like the fact that you're not fighting with these stupid IMAX glasses and juggling your popcorn and stuff is because I don't know about you, but because I wear glasses, the 3D glasses always fall off my face in the middle of the movie, and it's really disruptive, right?
Yeah.
Put the Vision Pro on, it doesn't move, and the 3D is crystal clear. These movies are really good. Like, I mean, I don't remember the Hobbit.
No. They look really good.
Well, that's what I mean. They look
really good.
No, but I mean, yeah. And there's all kinds of like machinations between this and setting up Lord of the Rings, which was a prequel from before. And I mean, the fact that none of them were nominated for anything Academy-wise should tell you, right? But I mean, like it's killer casts. I mean, like half of the actors in The Hobbit, I didn't know who half of them were when it went back, in 2012. But now they're all like, one of them's like a cop. One of them we've seen, the guy with the funny handlebar mustache, dwarf. He's been in so many Tom Nesbitt, I think. He's been in so many cop dramas, and he's played like Americans and stuff like that. And Armitage is and of course Martin Freeman is he does a really good job of Bilbo. He's believable as Bilbo, and I don't really see him as when you see him in other roles like Dr. Watson or whatever, right? So
yeah,
he's more Martin Freeman-ish, right? So yeah, it's I don't know, I enjoyed it. Let's put it that way. It was a good like I said, because it's on sale, I don't mind paying the money, but I enjoyed it. So, and I also got the Jurassic World ones, which I'll watch again, and the I did watch the one with what's her name, Colin Jost, White,
Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, I watched that one on Prime, but not in 3D. So I'm kind of curious to see that one in 3D. But anyway, it's on sale too. Anyway, so like I said, there's a lot of horror stuff. I mean, even the Creature from the Black Lagoon is in 3D, and it's available. I've never seen that movie, but yeah, it's a classic horror movie, right?
Yeah, the one thing that was on sale this week that I was tempted by is there's the documentary they did about the failed attempt to make Jodorowsky's Dune in the 70s.
Really? Okay.
There's a doc about that it's on sale for $5 this week, and I was like, I would probably.
Can't you see that somewhere else? Can't you get it on Tubi or whatever?
Look. Yeah, maybe it's
there's an app called Just Watch. You can look in there.
What? Just Watch? You say?
Just Watch. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to The Boys. We got season 5, episode 5. We got a few more to go here, right?
We're down to this is episode 5 of 8, so we only have 3 episodes to go in the entire run. So yeah, this was an interesting episode because it kind of so the episode was titled One Shots, and a one shot in comics vernacular is a standalone story. It's an episode that's basically like a bottle episode of a television show. It's self-contained, beginning, middle, end. Obviously not strictly speaking applied here, but it does kind of feel like they're telling you stories that are kind of adjacent to the bigger narrative that's happening here. Like a big focus on Firecracker in this episode, but then also a pretty big focus on Black Noir's sort of separate storyline and what's going on with him. Bit of a storyline, what's going on with Ashley, the vice president. And then we do get some, bits mixed in with Butcher and what's going on with the dog and
the dog has one of the stories, right?
Yeah.
Terror,
yeah,
and then we have Sister Sledge as well, or Sister Sage. But it all sort of pins off this boardroom meeting where they all kind of lynch off of that one, and it's not quite told quite linearly.
Yeah,
it's
it
kind of like
overlaps.
five different approaches to the same story or the same starting point, right? And you go into each one of these people's, their perspective on what's going on, and of course there's a big shocker, but that was actually early in the episode, but yeah.
Yeah, and this, again, the stakes are high right now. We're down to the last few episodes of the series, last half of the season. And so, anything's on the table, right? And so, you kind of never know what you're going to get from episode to episode. We've seen they've killed off like major characters already this season. There's been some huge things happening. And the sort of they're ratcheting the tension up a little bit about, Homelander's, growing instability. They're ratcheting up the search for V1 to try and, protect the people that need to be protected. There's sort of all these storylines that are coming together. But also, yeah, like the stories that they told in this one, they tell this story about Firecracker who, goes and meets with her former pastor from her church that she grew up near in Florida. And, she has love for this person who basically sounds like he kind of saved her soul, saved her life.
Raised her, basically, yeah.
Yeah, and then, of course, she still makes the decision to turn on this guy because Homelander is so scary for her and because she's such a zealot, right? And, we see the levels that, the Deep has gone to. Noir is kind of almost ready to walk away from all this stuff because he's kind of found this other career as an actor and ready to move on. And the Deep is so insecure about that he literally kills the guy that Noir's working with, right? So we see this like self-sabotaging insanity, this cycle of zealotry. And, again, wow, I wonder where we could see something like that in real life. People who are willing to basically sell their souls to the devil for bag full of silver. And so, yeah, we get these kind of interesting overlapping stories of, how everybody's kind of got their own way of skewing and accepting the way that they're doing things. Firecracker's story, I think, is the most compelling one in this whole arc. It kind of ties this whole thing in a bow because it starts with her talking with the Reverend and then it ends with her inadvertently encountering Homelander, and Homelander, basically, again, spoilers, basically just impulsively being like, you know what, I'm done with you. And, he's already mad at her because he's jealous that she's sleeping with Soldier Boy. And so he just kills her. And, again, for a character who has been just, on her knees, literally and figuratively for him, it just, again, it kind of speaks to how little regard he has for the people around him and how, he really is so narcissistic and so flawed that just cannot see value in anybody but himself, and everybody's expendable and everybody's just a nuisance to him. And again, it points to how far gone he's gone at this point. The real star of this episode, we've kind of skipped around it, is when we see Soldier Boy and Homelander go to Los Angeles to try and find some of this compound V1 that they think can protect Homelander in case this virus gets loose. And we end up with like this great set of cameos from all these actors who are so Seth Rogen is the one of the EPs, executive producers and creators of this show, along with his collaborator Evan Goldberg. The two of them have this is their like they produce this show. And so this is where this all sort of spins out from, is when Homelander and Soldier Boy go to this guy's house, who's a big, a former member of the Seven, who's a friend of this group, and it's Seth Rogen, it's Kumail Nanjiani, it's Chris Mintz-Platz, who am I forgetting? Will Forte, and they're all sitting around this table playing poker, and they're playing versions of themselves.
Yeah, I love Forte's line where they killed off Hater, so there's more roles for him.
There's more roles for the Forte. Yeah, so they're playing these like, kind of hyper crazy versions of themselves, and yeah, it's basically like, what would these guys be like?
They all turned in all the other actors to get the roles. Yeah.
Well, that's it, and yeah, so at one point, Mike Crispin-Platts basically says like, hey, you know who I hear is a Starlighter? Michael Cera, and he's like, don't turn in Cera, you've known him for 20 years. He's like, man, I need the part.
Yeah.
So we get these very, very funny scene of these actors kind of playing cowardly and wimpy versions of themselves, and then it turns into this sort of fight scene where they knock out Homelander and they're gonna kill him, and Soldier Boy's like, nah, we can't do that. He's a jerk, but he's my jerk. I can't let you guys kill him here. And so then it turns into this kind of fight scene where this speedster character is trying to this is Marathon, I think is the guy's name, is basically trying to catch.
He was replaced by the speeding guy, the running guy.
Yeah.
A train.
Yeah. So they get this hilarious scene through this part of the episode inside this LA mansion where Soldier Boy is like hiding and also using all these actors as human shields as Marathon keeps going around corners and just pasting all of these guys. The scene culminating with Seth Rogen getting carved in half and then being like, is it bad? Was so funny. And so, I mean, again, like, it did feel a little gratuitous to have them there, and it did feel a little bit kind of, it took you out of the episode a little bit to have all those guys playing themselves, but it was so funny. It was such a funny scene where he's like, you two stand right there, and they both just get pasted. Come with me. Okay, stand right there. Yeah, so again, it was a weird episode. It was definitely, it felt like a bit of a gear change from this sort of arc of him, the Homelander is a prophet of God. I did see a quote from Eric Kripke, who's the showrunner for this and the actual show creator for this week, who was like, we had written this like a year ago, and we were like, is this too far? Are people going to freak out about the fact that we're saying that Homelander
is Bible
positioning himself as like, I'm actually God, I'm not the son of God, I'm God himself, and blah, blah. And he's like, are we stretching this? Is this too far? Is this premise too far? And he's like, and then this other thing happened in the real world. And of course, he had to ruin it for us again. So, they think they are going to a place where they are being absolutely absurd, and the reality keeps creeping in around them. So, lets you know the world we're living in right now. But yeah, I'm curious to see how this leads us going forward. The supporting cast is starting to get thinner. Again, we lost A-Train earlier in the season. We've lost Firecracker now. Seth Rogen's dead. I mean, I did laugh hysterically. There was a promo for Invincible season 5, and it said, unfortunately, due to the events of this week's episode of The Boys, Seth Rogen will not be available to voice Alan the Alien in season 5 of Invincible. And it was official. It was out through the actual Invincible social media channels, which again is, if you weren't watching this, you would have no idea what they're talking about, but that was super funny.
So did we lose Stan Edgar in this episode? I can't remember.
Stan is in it, but he basically, they say like he's stonewalling.
Oh, he sends him to LA, right?
He's the one who sends him to LA. He said the only person who might have the drug is out in LA, the V1.
Is Mr. Marathon, yeah.
And then so they decide to, go do that. But then the episode ends with them saying, no, it's not. It basically, Soldier Boy catches Marathon at the end and basically says like, did you actually have the V1? He's like, no, Bombsight has it. Yes, Bombsight has it. And then Homelander kills Marathon. And so the two of them are still out in LA, and theoretically next episode, they're going to go looking for Bombsight to find the V1. So again, weird episode. Again, shouts to, what's the actor's name? I like her. I want to get her name right. Where are we here?
Ashley or Valerie Curry?
Valerie Curry, who I've been following on social media for a few years now, and is incredibly charming, and obviously nothing like her character. She's very, very, very thoughtful, very, very interesting person, and has been playing this really, really over the top and yet conflicted character for a while now, and doing a wonderful job of it. So I just want to make sure she gets a shout out, because Valerie was so good as Firecracker in this series. And obviously won't make it to the end game of it all, but she was really, really such a great part of this series. So I'm sure she gets her love.
Yeah, she's been in a few shows I've watched, and I didn't realize it was her.
Well, again, she's got the crazy costume, she's got the crazy hair, she's got the drawl and the whole thing. Like, that's not who Valerie is. That's who Firecracker is, right?
The character you love to hate.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, well, let's move on to our watch list. You don't have anything on your watch list.
I must admit I didn't have a lot of extra time this week. I've had a few distractions, but I do have something. You go first, and then I'll throw something in at the end.
All right, so first off, I saw the trailer for Ted Lasso 4 came out, and I was kind of wondering how they were going to approach this, because he had sort of ended his run with the team that he was coaching before, and they're doing it with lady soccer players, right? So looks like most of the gang is back together. I don't think I saw Coach there, but the tall blonde woman from Game of Thrones is there.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like most of the band is back together for this, and yeah, I watched the trailer too. I thought, it looks like Ted Lasso. It looks charming, and just. I feel like Ted Lasso is going to be comfort food, like I don't expect it to be like as revelatory as the first couple seasons were, of just that, like, man, it's so nice to watch something that's just pleasant in a world that's getting kind of icky. But it's fun seeing those characters again. And, I realized as I watched it, I was like, I really like these people. I like these characters. Like, I'm looking forward to getting back together with them and hanging out. One of the best adages that I've heard about, watching an old show that you've seen before, or these sort of rebooted shows is, I miss my friends, like I miss hanging out with these people. They're good people, and I enjoy spending time with them. And it's the same thing, right? Like, you just kind of, I really like these people. I want to spend more time with them. Okay.
I don't know if you were on the show where I talked about how 70 millimeter is projected. This is another follow-up from Adam Savage's Tested channel. He went in and we spent time at the IMAX headquarters, I guess somewhere in the States, where he learned how how 70 millimeter IMAX film is scanned and printed. So scanning is kind of an interesting thing, where they need to take a film that's been shot, like, let's say a Nolan, for instance, film. This is how they make the DVDs, for example, or whatever, right? Or how they distribute them to places that don't have the proper film projectors. Frame by frame, they have these really ancient, bespoke devices that were created. Actually, one of them was created by hand, and it's like, it's got a 2-inch granite table for stability. Like, it looks great. But the reason why it's granite is so that the scanner doesn't move, and it does a single thin, like, it does like 4 pixels tall as it goes across the film, kind of thing, right? Really fascinating thing to watch, see how they scan the films. And so they have that scanner, and then they have a newer version of it, which they use primarily for that, but they keep the old one for backup. It's a really interesting sort of examination and talk about celluloid and humidity and things like that. And then they have another room where they print to film. So they take a digital IMAX capture, and they print it with these huge cathode ray tubes onto film, right? And they have this special lens, and there's all this kind of these cool tricks that they do, like, the capture device is a certain distance away from the film itself, like physically, like inches away, so that if there's dust or whatever on the film, it's either not scanned or printed, kind of thing. So it's really kind of interesting to talk about that. And it's really, really fascinating follow-up to the last one where I talked about how it's projected. This is how it's actually digitized and or turned back into celluloid, right?
Cool.
And then I stumbled across this one, I guess because of the kind of content I look on YouTube and on the Facebook. I got this one, just showed up, and it was explaining how Technicolor worked, right? Because they went from black and white film to Technicolor, right? And Technicolor was this sort of, all the big movies of the days did it. And how they do it is really kind of cool. Is like conventional color film, like when you look at a color photograph or you have colored negative film, it's actually a triple layer of three chemical layers, right? And one reacts to red light, one reacts to green light, one reacts to blue light, and the reverse, it's cyan, magenta, and yellow on the reverse, right? So on the paper, it's cyan, magenta, and yellow, but on film, it's RGB, right? And then how you look at it on the screen. But the way they've developed Technicolor was they put filters on the camera so that they would filter out everything but the red light, and they filter out everything but the green light, and filter out everything but the blue light. And they used 3 pieces of film in the camera at the same time as they shot the movies. Now we're talking like 30s here, right?
Yeah,
like, like we're talking like Wizard of Oz, right? And they for instance, they had to work. They had to really work on the color. Like they had to find a particular yellow brick road. They had to find a specific yellow that would appear to be yellow. Like it was not perfect, right? And the cameras are huge. They're like they make IMAX films look like handy cams, or IMAX cameras look like handy cams. And there was this one lady who was approved to be the Technicolor lady who, she was in charge of all the sort of like the standard and how that was used and whatever. And she was super picky and super opinionated about how they would film things and stuff like that. And she was married to one of the executives of Technicolor, right? Like she had the inside job. And famously, she was kicked off the set of Gone with the Wind because she was just like too disruptive. Like everything had to be like the reason why the Wizard of Oz is so brightly lit that's because they had to brightly light in order to capture this sort of fake RGB capture, right? But if you look at Gone with the Wind, there's like dark scenes and there's blacks and there's like almost Caravaggio type shading and that kind of stuff because he kicked her off the show, right? Because she was being too demanding, right? So anyway, I just thought it was just kind of a cool sort of like hacky way of making color film. And of course, there are other types of color film that came along afterwards. And then so Technicolor was only around for maybe 15 years or something like that. But that's why all those movies you see in the 30s and 40s and early 50s, I guess, that were done in Technicolor, I'm doing air quotes, were done with this three film process, like actual 3 physical reels of film running through the camera at the same time.
Cool.
Yeah, not layered, like side by side, kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing some videos of there's a guy I follow on social media who talks about retro tech, like stuff that existed from the past. That was like home video kind of stuff. And he was showing off 1970s Trinitron projection television set, and it's exactly that. It basically has like the 3 colored bulbs that basically overlap and layer the stuff onto the screen, and they're like,
Well, if you take a magnifying glass or a loop, we used to call it a loop, we use it in printing, and hold it up to your monitor or your phone, you'll see that there are actually RG, red, green, and blue elements there, and that there's, in the case of the phone, they're so fine that your brain can't see them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that's the same trick with the OLED screens in the Vision Pro. That's why you don't see the pixels. You see pixels if it's a low res image, but you don't see it. You can't perceive it.
Yeah.
Because it's too fine for your eye. Yeah, it's all trickery. It's funny. I studied optical illusions in university. Wonder why I'm still dealing with optical illusions. None of this stuff is real, Jonathan. It's not real.
So your stuff has inspired something that I saw this week that I wanted to flag that I thought was really cool. So they are building the world's largest movie screen in Florida. Is this bigger than the Sphere? Bigger than the Sphere?
I
guess I don't know if that qualifies, but the largest movie screen in the world right now, and I assume they're talking about like a flat standard sort of screen, is 127 feet by 69 feet, and it's at an IMAX theater in Germany.
In Germany. I thought it was in Florida. Okay.
In Germany. And the largest one in the United States, or in North America, is in New York City, and it is 101 by 75. I have been to that theater, and I have seen a movie there, and it is crazy how big that is. I can't imagine how much bigger that one in Germany is, because I've been to the one in New York and it is massive. I saw actually, I was there for a press event when the movie The Polar Express came out. They took a bunch of us reporters down and showed us some of the 3D visual effects on that screen. And then I got to interview Tom Hanks and Robert Zemeckis the next day, which was a pretty cool day. So this new place that they're building it in Clearwater, which is in the Tampa area down in southern Florida, and South Central anyways. And it's going to be 130-foot wide screen, gigantic, massive screen that they're building down there. They're building a whole entertainment complex down there. Obviously, Florida is a huge tourist area. And so they think this is going to be a big draw. There's going to be bowling alley and video game kinds of stuff down there. But it's interesting that, and we talk about, obviously, theatrical movies, things, that may not be the way that they used to be. They suffered a huge blow with the COVID pandemic, and that has changed movie-going habits for a lot of people. And it's interesting that they are in the wake of that and, declining revenues at the theaters, declining attendance at movie theaters. They're building this just massive theater. I wonder if making these things just the spectacle of spectacles, something that is just immense, is a direction that other developers or entertainment venues might consider, of, sort of moving away from the sort of small, little theater, but having maybe making it into more an event by having people go and see something on just the biggest, most massive, crazy screen. Like, I think about it again. If you have the opportunity, you generally go see things on the biggest screen you can, best quality you can. I wonder where the line is on that. And, obviously it's harder to do in certain areas. Could you imagine where in Toronto they would put, a 150-foot movie screen and theater around that? I mean, that would be, like the size of an airplane hangar, basically.
Yeah, maybe you should tell Doug Ford about that one. Just on a side note, so I saw the David Gilmour film at the BFI in IMAX in London, and that is 66 by 85 wide by 66 high, and the Cinesphere is 80 feet wide by 60 feet high. So
there you go.
BFI IMAX is slightly bigger than the Cinesphere. Cinesphere is the first permanent IMAX theater built in 1971.
So, I mean, when you put those numbers there and you think about how big that feels when you're in it, and obviously you and I have been to those venues and seen many things there, those felt huge. I can't fathom how big that one in Germany is, let alone this one in Florida is going to be. But it did make me think a little bit about movie-going habits and how people might be enticed if it felt more eventized by, yeah, you can see it at home on your, 55-inch or, 65-inch or hell, even 75 or 85-inch television set. We're talking about something here that's as big as the side of an apartment complex, like this is massive on a scale. So, yeah, interesting.
On the other side, I have seen on the YouTube channel, I've seen films on the screen, on the concerts that are on the Sphere in London or in Las Vegas on my Vision Pro, and they look pretty freaking big on the Vision Pro, even though they're not quite high res, which is the sad part about it. But yeah, I've gotten the sense of how big the Sphere is in terms of like stuff I've seen there. I've seen people film on, put them on Instagram and stuff like that, but it's different when you see it in stereo and full size. But it'd be interesting to see. Like I'll have to play around with my IMAX app on my Vision Pro and see if I can emulate. Was it 150 wide? You said.
130 is the one they're building.
130, yeah. I'll have to try that,
Yeah.
Because that's pretty big.
That's huge. It's huge. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in Florida or intend to go to Florida in a few years, they're going to have this crazy theater there. I, for one...
But the one in Germany is bigger, though, you said.
The one in Germany is slightly smaller than this one they're going to build. This will be the new largest screen on the world.
Yeah, but you have to go to Florida.
Yeah, again, I'll choose Germany. I choose Germany.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that brings us to the end of the show. So, Jonathan, if people want to get in touch with you, where do they find you?
Well, start on our Slack channel. That's always a fun place to find us. We have lots of fun there, sharing all our good goodies and information and spoilers and all kinds of good stuff. If you want to go outside of that, maybe Instagram, I'm at JPK News, or where I'm at JPK.
Hey, all right. Yeah, my name is Timitra, Timmitra. That's my handle on most things, including Blue Ski, Mastodon Ski, Instagram, Substack Ski. So until next time, we'll see you in the future. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. If you have feedback or questions, you can get in touch with us on the website. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
Now with McDonald's, wake up to a $4 breakfast meal deal. Wake up to a sausage McMuffin or sausage biscuit, to hash browns, and wake up to a hot coffee. Get your $4 breakfast meal deal.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.